Today's Thursday, July 24, and we are the District 4 Environmental Commission meeting in Essex, Vermont to conduct a merits hearing on applications 4C0329-24 and 4C0347-6 filed by Allen Brook Development, requesting the creation of a 5-lot commercial subdivision on an existing 109.5 acre tract and the construction of approximately 4,100 linear feet of public roadway and a 33,600 square feet warehouse on lot 11, located at 132 Thompson Drive in Essex. Lot 10 would be 6.4 acres, lot 11 also 6.4, lot 12 would be 2.3 acres, lot 13 22.9, and lot 9 the remaining 71.5 acres. The project proposes constructing approximately 4,100 linear feet of public roadway. Commercial lots would be served by municipal facilities, including roads, recreation paths, water supply, and wastewater collection. The project also includes, as I said, the 33,600 square foot warehouse on lot 11. I have quite a lengthy set of preliminary matters to go through here, so that's fair warning. There's a lot to do to set up the actual testimony. A pre-hearing conference was held on June 18 of this year for this application for the purposes of identifying the contested facts and legal issues, discussing party status, and determining a hearing schedule. The commissioners, the applicants, and residents of the project area also conducted a site visit prior to the pre-hearing conference. The pre-hearing conference was conducted pursuant to Act 250, Rule 16, and pursuant to Rule 13B. We recessed the pre-hearing conference pending the submittal of additional information from the parties, as outlined in the pre-hearing conference recess order, which was issued on June 23. That made preliminary party status determinations. There have been no objections to the order. I am Tom Little. I'm the chair of the District 4 Commission. I live in Shelburne, and my fellow commission members here are Pamela Loringer of Colchester and Parker Reilly of Burlington. Caitlin Hayes is the District 4 coordinator managing this application, and she is supported by Stephanie Monahan, our other District 4 coordinator. Now going to read through the Vermont open meeting law requirements for holding this hearing, with particular focus on those participating remotely. And this is in accordance with Title I of the Vermont Statutes, annotated Section 312. We're providing public access to the meeting by online video conference with additional access through telephone. We're using the Microsoft Teams platform for this hybrid meeting. All members of the commission have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during the meeting because we are here, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if desired, participate in the meeting by attending in person, downloading the Microsoft Teams application, or by calling into the toll-free number provided in the meeting notice. As well, we have provided public notice of instructions for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access it using telephone or Microsoft Teams in the meeting notice. That document, including those instructions, have also been provided in the meeting notice on the Act 250 database online. If you're having a problem using Teams on your computer, you can call into the meeting on your telephone by dialing 802-828-7667 and entering 274-449-487#. The numbers are in the written hearing notice if you need to look them up. For those of you who may participate by phone, press *5 to raise your hand and your microphone will be enabled. And then press *6 to unmute your microphone. The meeting is subject to the open meeting laws as stated. By participating, you are consenting to being audio and visually recorded and for that recording to be published in the board's online database and/or YouTube channel. In addition, any written information or exhibits provided to us or staff regarding official state business are considered public records and will become part of the permanent record to be published in the board's online database. The chat function has been disabled for the Teams meeting. The hearing is being recorded, including any noises, barking dogs, personal conversations, etc., made when your microphone is not muted. But please mute your microphone when not speaking. If you would like to speak during the hearing, please raise your hand if you are in the hearing room. If you are participating online via Teams, use the raise hand feature, which is located in the toolbar in the top center of your screen. If you're participating exclusively by telephone, press *6 to unmute and speak up so that we can hear you. For the audio-visual record and for the benefit of those participating by telephone, please state your name before speaking and, if relevant, your street address. Finally, and this is important, please do not log into the Microsoft Teams meeting on a computer or other device and participate on your phone at the same time. That will cause some very distracting audio feedback that can greatly disrupt the hearing. We'll start now by taking a roll call attendance of all persons participating in the meeting. I think everyone here in person has signed in on the sign-in sheet. As I call your name, will those of you with us here in the hearing room, please raise your hand to identify yourself. And I thank you for your handwriting. It's very legible. Scott Dillon, Jared Carter, Anthony Stout, Brian Courier, Robert Rushford, Lois Whitmore, Nicole Senecal, Nick Ovett, Corey Mack, Al Senecal, Catherine Sonic, and Patty Davis. Okay. Coordinator Hayes, could you now please read from the Teams meeting participant list to identify anyone participating remotely?
Yes, we have a handful of folks. We have Cheryl Van Epps participating, Lorraine Zaloon, Lisa Allen, Ann Miller, Gina Halpin Barrett, and Susanna. I'm sorry, I'm going to try to get your last name right. Susanna Polvo. All right, and those are the folks that are attending online.
That's 5 people. There's 5 of them.
Yes. 6. 6 of them. And I believe the 5 of those folks are being represented by Jared Carter. Susanna is representing herself.
I think everyone who has been granted preliminary party status or friend of the commission status heard this at our pre-hearing conference. I'll just remind you that if you want to continue to receive documents and be on the so-called service list, provide us with an email address or mailing address and make sure that if that changes, that you update us about that. Prior to the pre-hearing conference, the commissioners reviewed all of the materials submitted for the application, in part with an eye towards identifying any conflicts of interest that a commissioner might have. We also studied the names of the parties to look for potential conflicts of interest. We did not then or now identify any conflicts of interest that need to be disclosed at this time. So I'll now ask, does anyone present or online have any concerns about the commissioners in terms of conflicts of interest? Thank you. After today's proceedings, I remind everyone that all communications of any kind, letter, email, phone, or in person, must flow through Caitlin Hayes, our district coordinator, not through other parties or commission members. I'm now going to ask anyone who thinks that they might address the commission during the hearing to swear or affirm that they will tell the truth. Accordingly, anyone who expects to address us in person here or online, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that this testimony or evidence you will provide relative to the consideration of this application shall be truthful, accurate, and complete under the pains and penalties of perjury? If so, answer, I do. Is there anyone who wants to say I don't? Okay.
It looks like we had, folks are virtually raising their hands. Is that,
Okay,
so it
that's
looks
fine.
like Ann Miller. Can you, let us know whether through? Okay, good to go. Thank you.
In a moment, the applicant will give us an overview of the application, but first I want to make some comments on party status and the process for participating in the hearing. This is perhaps somewhat redundant to what we said at the pre-hearing conference, but it may be a useful redundancy. Our charge as an Act 250 commission is to collect evidence as to whether the project meets the requirements of Act 250, and based upon that evidence, to decide either to issue a permit with or without conditions or deny a permit. We gather the evidence in order to make an informed decision. This hearing is part of the process to collect that evidence. Some have requested to participate in the proceeding as a party. Party status is outlined in Act 250. It's important mainly for two reasons. Party may introduce evidence, bring in experts or other witnesses to testify and take part in the arguments, and may cross-examine other witnesses. Second, only a party may appeal our decision to the environmental court if they are unhappy with our decision. Party status is decided on an issue-by-issue basis. Act 250 is organized around 32 criteria and sub-criteria. During the pre-hearing conference and through subsequent informational submittals, folks requested party status under these criteria. The pre-hearing conference report and order made preliminary party status determinations. Those preliminarily granted party status will be permitted to provide testimony for the criteria they were preliminary granted party status under. We will not be entertaining any new party status requests today, as the time for those requests has passed. If you are a party, when your turn comes, please identify yourself, where your property is located, and explain how you think the project will have specific impacts on you under each of the criteria on which you have been preliminarily granted party status. Sometimes after we hear all of the testimony, we deliberate and determine that while it appeared at first that someone should have party status under a specific criteria, and ultimately they did not prove or document an impact under that criterion. We will make final party status determinations when we issue a final decision. We also have a status under the law of a friend of the commission, which is someone who is not a party but may be able to offer testimony with certain information that might not otherwise be available to us. And friends of the commission do not have appeal rights to appeal the commission's decision. Importantly, we ask that you listen carefully to the testimony of other parties and try to give your own testimony in a way that is not unnecessarily repetitive or duplicative of prior testimony. If you agree with prior testimony, you may say so. A few important notes to underscore. The application is not seeking approval for construction of the proposed Amazon warehouse, so-called Project Moose. That development would require a separate subsequent Act 250 permit amendment application. We understand that project was denied one local permit a week ago. This application does seek to allocate the total the total vehicle trips for all 5 lots. Construction of any other warehouses beyond the one seeking approval on lot 11 will require a separate subsequent permit amendment. Now, based on the criterion that people have requested and have been granted preliminary status on, and the criterion that no one has requested interested party status on, we will narrow the scope of the hearing to the following criteria. Number 5, regarding traffic safety and congestion. And we have a lot of materials that have been filed regarding criterion 5 already from Vermont Agency of Transportation, from the applicant, and from others. Criterion 1, air pollution and noise. Criterion 8, scenic and natural beauty of the area and aesthetic issues, including noise. And criterion 10, regarding the project's compliance with the town of Essex town plan. As noted, we, with the applicants and residents of the project area, conducted a site visit on June 18th, walking to the site from River Road, State Route 117, up to the existing private road to the site, stopping along the way at places to observe conditions pointed out by those on the site visit, and then walking back to the starting place. Any comments made at the site visit were not recorded and are not part of the record. In a moment, we'll ask the applicant to present a general overview of the project in brief, keeping in mind that the commission has read the application and the exhibits and has been to the site. And we'll ask the applicant at that point to explain how the project addresses all Act 250 criteria except the 4 that I pointed out earlier. Our strong inclination is to start with criterion 5, traffic safety and congestion. And bear with me, try to follow this along, because this wasn't easy for us to figure out. Have the applicant present the applicant's testimony on number 5. And then permit anyone who wishes to cross-examine the applicant's witness, that is to ask questions, to do so. That needs to be in the form of questions. If you have your own testimony about criterion 5, there will be a later time for that. And as I often say, when I moderate my town meeting, if you have a question of someone else, please phrase it in the form of a question so that the witness knows what they're being asked. And then after the applicant's witness has been cross-examined, we would have any witnesses that Attorney Carter wishes to call to give testimony on criterion 5. And then cross-examination of them by the applicant. And then we would move on criterion 5 to any of the other interested parties not represented by Attorney Carter to give any testimony on criterion 5. And then we would allow cross-examination of them by anyone else who wished to cross-examine them. If that looks like it ends up working reasonably well, that is how we would then handle criteria 1, 8, and 10. There's more than one way to do that, but that seemed like a logical way to do it. It would give all of the interested parties a chance to both testify and cross-examine the witnesses on each of the criteria. We have every intention to complete the hearing today by 4:00 p.m. We'll take a half an hour break at noon. Once we finish, we will likely issue another hearing recess order that may ask for additional materials, give an opportunity for parties to file a brief or requested findings, that sort of thing. When all of those subsequent filings are in hand, we will deliberate and issue a decision. Are there any questions about our process? Yes.
Hi, I'm Catherine Sonic, and I'm here representing the town of Essex. And I have a statement that I would like to read at some point from the town manager. It doesn't really fall into any of those particular buckets of the criteria. So I'm just not sure when I should present that. So we do that whenever you think best.
Do you know approximately how long it is?
It's a big packet, but it's all.
Well, let's do it now. And you may not have to stay till 4:00.
Should I come forward or?
What do you don't need to if you can
Stand up.
stand up. Perfect.
Here, District 4, Environmental Commissioners. I'll just start out. Greg, this is from Greg Duggan, the town manager of the town of Essex. As you consider application 4C0329-24 and 4C0347-6 from Allen Brook Development, I write on behalf of the town of Essex to give a brief history of the town zoning and resource preservation district industrial for the subdivision and development are proposed. Our PEI district was created in the 1970s. Although it's undergone several iterations since then, the zoning district has always had land that was designated for conservation and recreation and land that was designated for commercial and industrial development. After years of uncertainty about how fluid the boundaries were between the two types of land, the town reached a settlement agreement with the current landowner, Allen Brook Development, in 2016. One of the main outcomes of the settlement agreement, which is attached here, was to define which portions of the RPDI are reserved in perpetuity for conservation and recreation, much of which is now owned by the town of Essex, and which portions are available for commercial and industrial development. This application is proposed for a portion of the RPDI district that is privately owned and within the boundaries of the commercial industrial portion of the RPDI. The 5-lot subdivision and the 33,600 square foot warehouse on lot 11 conform to the Essex Town Plan and have received local approval from the Essex Development Review Board. Any future development within the lots must adhere to the town zoning regulations for the RPDI, which are also attached, and receive site plan approval from the Essex Development Review Board. Thank you for your consideration on this matter and for your respect for Essex's local zoning bylaws and regulations. Sincerely, Greg Gunn.
Can you hand that in to her? Okay, thank you. Does anyone,
Thank you very much.
although the person who wrote that isn't present, does anyone have any questions for the witness? All right, thank you very much. As promised, we now ask the applicant to do a overview of the project. And then in the course of which, if you can, cover how it complies with the Act 250 criteria that we are not calling out separately for more intensive testimony, understanding that we will generally take the application and the supporting materials that have been filed with it as evidence of compliance with those other criteria. So the applicant has the floor. Please proceed.
Okay, so this is a
By first introducing yourself.
Yes, sir. Brian Courier, Larry Burke Civil Associates, project engineer.
Thank you.
So this is an amendment to the original Act 250 land use permit out here at Saxon Hill, 4C0329. This is the 24th amendment. There's also many letters after the amendment. So there's a lot of permits issued under this umbrella within the Saxon Hill Industrial Park. So we thought a great place to start would be to talk about the highlights of the permit history that get into, you know, how we got to the 24th Amendment, what's applicable in the past, and why it's a dual Act 250 permit number, which isn't terribly common from my experience. So in the 1980s, the 750 acre parcel started with a water system that was the village of Essex Junction. From 1923 to 1955, reforesting efforts planted roughly 500,000 trees to help control erosion and protect the water supply that the village had invested in. In 1950, the village moved to the Indian Brook Reservoir for their new water supply. And in 1977, the town created the RPDI district for the entire 750 acre parcel. And the objective of the zoning district was to ensure protection of the natural resources through recreational and conservation uses, while allowing portions of the 750 acre parcel to be developed for industrial purposes. Those 1977 regulations required 25% industrial, 60% recreational and conservation, and then 15 for future industrial uses. So adding to the 60-40 split that's current today, and that's been the case for almost 50 years. In 1978, the village sold the parcel to Forestdale Heights, a private entity with certain pedestrian easements over the 750 acre parcel. From there, the town easements gave the public passive recreation rights over those portions of the 750 acre parcel that were not developed for industrial use, and specifically stated that such uses could be modified or altered by the legislative body of the town to permit other additional uses at such times as the legislative body determined that the proposed modification are in the best interest of the town. Despite the existence of the town easements, the public right of ways over the parcel were not well defined. Specifically, it was unclear whether the stated trail easements applied to the trails in existence in 1978 or the newer trails over the parcel. As you can imagine, conflicts ensued, and and there was no clear definition of the public rights of the land. In 1978, the District Commission issued land use permit 4C0329, which is the umbrella original permit for the 750 acres, which included 25 acres of industrial development. Since the issuance of the original permit, there are numerous amendments for commercial, industrial development and conveyances of portions of the 750 acre parcel, with each new development parcel being added to the 40% portion of the property that was available for industrial development. In 92, the District Commission issued an amendment, the 16th at the time, for the extraction of 150,000 cubic yards of sand from 97 acres of the property, and also developed 10 acres of the industrial development. In 2002, the District Commission issued land use permit -16B for an additional 100,000 cubic yards of sand per year. And then later that year, Amendment 16C authorized Forestville Heights to use the existing gravel road, which was created under 4C0347, which is why it's a dual permit. That was originated from a Chatham Place commercial development that was never built, but this was the first iteration of that permit coming to existence. So the Hall Road on the southern portion of the property was why this was pulled into the dual Act 250 land use permit currently. And that approval approved truck access to and from the previously approved sand pit. The roadway was approved for 80 average trip ends, the maximum of 400 daily trip ends, and then 30 peak hour trips. So substantial heavy truck trips for sand extraction. Can you bring up Exhibit 22? And what this shows is the 1992 approved plan for sand extraction. We overlaid that on the site plan, an overall site plan for the current proposal. And the purpose is to show how the phase 2 development is within the limits of the sand extraction area that was approved and utilized in 92. Exhibit 122.
Oh, I thought you said 20.
Towards the bottom. Yeah, that's it. So this is the approved plan, and this is the approved plan from 1992. Shows the cell 2 and cell 5 of the sand extraction permit that was approved. Could you go to the next one? So we overlaid this map. I'm sorry, not the next sheet. If you could go to,
I think it's 123, right?
So we took that boundary, overlaid it on our current site plan, which shows the 5 commercial lots that are being proposed, the new public road that goes through the middle of the area. And the blue heavy line is the approved limits of extraction from that 92 sand pit. Aside from that, you can see that the plantings that are encompassing the majority of the park are planted in a grid pattern. Essentially, when sand extraction occurs, topsoil is stripped, sand is removed, topsoil is replaced, and then there's a reclamation planting plan that's part of that process. So very man-made, very unnatural. You can see the grid pattern in the ortho photo. The intention was to get vegetation growing as soon as possible to limit erosion potential. So the project in this application is located within a portion of the reclaimed Forestville Heights sand pit, as discussed. In addition, the planned access on 117 is mostly in the location of the prior hauled road from Forestville Heights sand pit, the dual permit number. As such, the project area was previously developed as an approved sand pit extraction project with the Hall Road 117, and the existing vegetation with the project area consists of tightly spaced rows of sandpit reclamation planting, which are approximately 15 to 25 years old. In 2010, Saxon Hill Corporation applied for 1 million cubic yards of sand removal within 54 acres and was denied by the town of Essex. That decision was appealed. In 2015, the town of Essex engaged in a long legal battle with the former landowner Forestdale Heights over the appeal. Unfortunately, the contentious nature of the appeal resulted in a strained relation between Saxon Hill Corporation and the town of Essex, as well as the public that used Saxon Hill Industrial Park. Eventually, Saxon Hill Corporation and the town of Essex negotiated a tentative settlement agreement that required voter approval. The voters of the town of Essex ultimately rejected the settlement, and the settlement did include a rezoning portion of the southern part of the parcel residential. In 2015, Forestdale Heights conveyed the land to Allenbrook Development, and the settlement agreement with the town was completed in a year's time in 2016. That included designating the 40-60 split, which conveyed 270 acres to the town of Essex and 130 acres to the remaining development, and approved a sand pit. And once the sand pit area is complete, that area is also to be dedicated to the town of Essex. So in the RPDI district since 1977, there's been this 40% of the area is meant for industrial uses, 60% of the area is meant for conservation. That area had never been defined. So as these industrial uses had come in, there's never a clear master planning effort made to, all right, where is this designated 40%? Where is this 60% designated area? And that's what the settlement agreement solidified. It created parcels A, B, C, and D. A and B were reserved for industrial uses and total about 130 acres. D and C are now owned by the town of Essex. And the sand pit, once it's closed, will also be part of parcel D and will total 270 acres. So the settlement was the first time that those boundaries had been looked at from a master planning standpoint. Yeah.
Put back up the overall plan showing those 4 lots.
This,
Probably, you go to the exhibit list, is your database tab. The overall plan.
We had it up before. It was like a,
Yeah, that
it
was-
was an inset on the.
That was an erosion control plan though.
That-
Yeah, that works fine. So parcels A and B are shaded darker. Parcel A is at the corner of Thompson Drive and Thompson Drive in the northwest corner. And parcel B is the irregular shaped parcel. The most northern part of parcel B is where the sand extraction operation currently exists today. Again, once that's closed, the sand pit is to be dedicated to the town of Essex and be absorbed into parcel D. As you move down, you can see that strip that's also shaded dark. That's part of parcel B. That's a designated 60-foot area for the eventual connection of Thompson Drive and what is now called Chemo Drive. But that was part of the master planning effort as well. The most southern part of parcel B that's shaded the darkest is where the site currently exists today in the southeast corner. And then you'll see in the middle of those 2 areas is the last lobe of parcel B, which is an area that cannot be developed until the sand pit's closure. So essentially it's a swap at that point. When the sand pit's closed, that northern lobe gets dedicated to the town. That frees Allenbrook to develop that southern portion of parcel B.
That's this one right here. That's that one.
That's right. Yep. And then parcel D is on the west side, owned by the town of Essex currently. Parcel C is on the east side. The only reason they're separate parcels, again, is because of that 60-foot strip that cuts them into 2 parcels. But in the totality, once full build out has occurred, it will be 270 acres. So this settlement agreement required Act 250 review and approval. So in 2016, land use permit 4C0329-20 was reviewed and approved by the district commission, essentially solidifying those boundaries and, acknowledging the master planning effort that had been done as part of the settlement agreement and approved the sand extraction operation on the most northern part of parcel B. As part of that application, a letter was submitted from the town of Essex, which is included in the exhibit list, and it states, Saxon Hill Industrial Park is one of the few industrial zoned areas in town. The Saxon Hill Industrial Park sits within the town sewer core and is pursuant to the town plan, is specifically designated for the development and is critical to the town's economic future. In fact, the industrial development of Saxon Hill Industrial Park is encouraged throughout our town plan. The negotiated settlement presents a more orderly plan for future development that will be better coordinated with the adjacent conservation areas. And that's generally, there was a -21 amendment application that was filed, I believe in 2016 or 17, that created a 9-lot subdivision in the extension of Thompson Drive, what we call phase 1. That is up in the northern corner, that's white. Thompson Drive was extended to the most northern part of parcel B, and Red Pine Circle, a spur road, was created heading to the east there. But it was a 9-lot subdivision. The first time the settlement and master plan agreement had been acted on, and we refer to that as phase 1 of the industrial park, as that's when the Allenbrook Development and Settlement Agreement was. Al, you have.
Yeah, I prepared a little note for the board as well. Brian has touched on a lot of the things that I prepared on. We should have maybe conversed a little bit more, but anyway, I'll read this quickly. The lands were part of the village, as Brian had said, Village of Essex water supply. Hector purchased the land from the village about 40 years ago, I believe it was, and Brian said it was in 1978. So over an approximate 35-year period, Hector permitted, extracted, and sold sand from the land. They were then reclaimed, restored, and left for future development. For almost 50 years, the land had been in the RPDI zoning district, zoned for commercial and industrial development, as well as recreational uses. And I know a lot of people have said, or don't understand that in the town, and believe that it's all the town's land, and it's not. There are that 130 acres that were left for the development. All of the land I acquired from Hector was in the RPI district, meaning 60% of the land would be left for conservation and 40% would be for development. When I purchased the land from Hector, he was in a long and costly legal dispute with the town. After I dropped the lawsuit, when I owned the land, and worked towards a settlement agreement with the town. The purchase transaction included a total of about 400 acres that I purchased from Hector, of which I gave 270 acres to the town for recreational uses and the conservation that they were looking for. And I just want to stress that. I know a lot of people don't understand that. I mean, I gave 270 acres to the town to settle this lawsuit. I think that was a pretty good gesture on my part to say, I live in this town. I want to keep the town from spending any money, in a lawsuit. And a lot of people don't understand that. But during that time, the town recognized that they would give me the 130 acres for developable uses in that district. Just to stress that. The settlement agreement clearly established lands reserved for development and to be conserved. There were a few other gives and takes, including, an agreement, but overall, I believe both parties were very happy with that agreement. The town designated the 40% developable area and chose to make those areas more or less some of the same areas which Hector had extracted sand. My proposed development is within the 40% land designated for development. These are not pristine forests, but instead are many tightly planted pine trees for the intent of preserving erosion and reclaiming the extracted areas. This is why we chose to replant these areas that fall in the buffer zones and not, get built on. The new road generally follows the existing haul roads or cuts through areas previously used for sand extraction. The town of Essex has confirmed that the lands were and are intended to, to development, meets their zoning regulations and design standards. Therefore, we are intending to develop this project to those standards. I would also like to point out that how the town laid this zoning district out is pretty unique in the way that it is distanced it from all residential properties. If you look at that area, not only are the developable sites have that buffer parcel D, but it's also very, very far from the residential uses. There's very few, there's none that I'm developing that abut any residential except for in the first phase. And it looks like that's just one residential piece. So there's not much. And where those areas are, they put in a 200-foot buffer on my property. So we can't even go up to the, but in several cases, it exceeds, 2,000 and 3,000 feet from any residential home. I think this is a very unique, and you guys may have seen it, a very unique design in the state. I mean, I've developed in other towns where there's industrial and residential districts meeting each other, and this design is very unique, and I think very, very, I'd like to give the town a thumbs up on that design. They did well with it. But at any rate, that's my story, and thank you for your time.
So those pieces weren't in our application, so spending a little more time on the permitting history. Specifically the overview of what we're here in for today, phase 2 of the Saxon Hill Industrial Park. You pull up exhibit 7. This is our overall plan. We were looking at a location plan previously. Yeah. Okay, so it's a 5-lot subdivision. The 5 lots range in size from roughly 6 acres to 23 acres. The 5th lot is lot 9, not intended for a building lot at this time, but it's the remaining lands of parcel B. So that includes the 60-foot strip up going all the way up to Thompson Drive, and it includes the middle lobe, and that includes the sand area too. It all in total. Lot 9 is 71 acres. So four commercial building lots, remaining lands is the 5th. We're proposing to construct roughly 4,000 linear feet of public roadway, and this is up from Vermont Route 117. It's about 2,000 feet until we get to the Allen Brook development parcel. The first 2,000 feet is constructed through an abutting landowner signed on to the application, SH2 LLC, where there is an existing solar field today. This roadway has 2 different drainage scenarios. The southern portion, which is the first 2,000 feet, is curbed. It's steeper. There's a closed catch basin network that's designed to route runoff to an infiltration basin that's at the base of 117. That infiltration basin is within a proposed stormwater easement. That is the Lee and Scherner property, also signed on as a abutting landowner, and they're about 1,000 feet onto Chemo Drive. The upper portion is where the plateau and the reclaimed sand pit area is. It's much flatter, so we don't have closed catch basins there. We have roadside ditches, and essentially everything is infiltrated into the right of way associated with Chemo Drive. Lot 11 has its own infiltration system. There's one in the front along the roadway, and there's also a pond in the back. Also with our road network is a AM peak hour warrant for a left turn lane. I think it's about 40% build out, but I'll let Corey talk more about that. So left turn lane on 117 is part of the proposal. while we construct Chemo Drive and residential driveways that have to be relocated, a solar access road that has to be relocated. This plan, shows existing overhead power lines. There's if you remember from our site visit, there's a high voltage distribution line with GMP structural towers, roughly 700 feet, up Chemo Drive. Oh, you guys, and so that's the high voltage, distribution line. There's also overhead, three-phase power from that crossing up to the southern boundary of development. Those overhead lines were installed as part of the solar field project. We're going to relocate some of the poles, work around them, but something we've been in discussions with Green Mountain Power about. And then there's, if you can scroll down, there's existing overhead power. Maybe zoom out one click. Starting within the Saxon Hill historic right of way. So this is the high voltage line. There's an existing line that comes up the old Saxon Hill right of way, all the way up and crosses and keeps going, right? Goes to a Champlain Water District tank. And it also turns and goes to the existing overhead power that's on Thompson Drive. We're planning on connecting to that power line at the end of the spur road, running overhead line along Chemo Drive and looping it with the overhead power that the solar field put in. That will give Green Mountain Power the ability to eliminate this 1,300 foot section of overhead line. It gives them the ability to. We don't have any timeframes on that, but looping the overhead power lines will allow for that. So substantial overhead power lines just within our immediate project area. Phase one of the development was approved with overhead power. Corporate Drive, which was also part of the umbrella permit, was approved with overhead power. Overhead power exists on Allen Martin Drive, Lower Sand Hill Road, and also 117. There's been a lot of comparisons at the local process about how this road may be similar to Sand Hill Road. So I looked at Chemo Drive, the first 2,000 feet versus Sand Hill Road and some of the shortcomings of Sand Hill Road. Sand Hill Road is roughly 11%. Chemo Drive is 8%. The town requires the roads.
Let's wait till we get to 5 and
Okay.
other things to do that. This is just stick to the overview and maybe, I don't know, I think we may be close to finishing an overview. Do you have anything else in the overview mode that you'd like to share?
So I talked about the subdivision. The proposal on lot 11 is a 33,600 square foot warehouse facility. It's a permitted use in the RPDI. We have 2 curb cuts on Chemo Drive. There's outdoor storage proposed on both sides of the building. It includes 58 parking spaces, 8 truck docks, and 6 overhead doors. And currently it's a spec building. We don't have a current end user in mind. So we're just getting approved as a warehouse.
Okay. When the -20 permit, I'm sorry, go back. When the original permit was issued, what was contemplated or stated in the permit for the road access to this industrial area? In and out. Do you know?
You mean the first permit? I mean, initially, if you were able to go to that overview, inset map, I believe that part of that Allen Martin made it constructed as part of the very first phase of the development, because there's lands on the other side of Thompson where your office is.
Corporate Drive.
Which was part of the original 750 acres. So you can see that that's over there. And so the Allen Martin extending up this to Route 15 was an initial piece. And then it was done in pieces. So for example, one of the early permits was just that white area to the left on Sand Hill. That was one of the earlier developed parcels. And then as you go up a little bit further, there were, some other buildings that, left there. I know one became state health, it may have been an IBM building for a while. And then, the Thompson Drive was developed over time. I think it's just developed in pieces. So as the first few buildings were built, it came up a couple hundred feet, then it kept getting extended and extended and extended on Thompson. Later on, Corporate Drive got developed and extended further down to the left. But by the time Allenbrook came along, everything was already sold to other parties. So they think of the RPDI, initially it was one owner, but really it's a zoning district. And so they're applying a zoning district to all property owners. Al had the remaining 400 acres left, and we ended up with that in the settlement agreement. So there wasn't a, that was one of the problems, is that it was an ad hoc kind of piecemeal development going forward without a clear understanding of where development would occur and where conservation would occur. And that was the, the primary source of conflict. And
I take it then that in the original permit, there was no planned access to 117.
Not at that time. So the first time because that's a different owner and it's in a different zoning district, or part of it is, and
Scroll down. So he didn't own this parcel, was separate.
and so that only occurred in the 1992 sand pit, the Forest Hill Heights sand pit, which was the two lower lobes of B.
Right here,
right
there.
Initially, that was approved to go up Thompson, and then in an amendment, I think it's 20C permit, got approval to run trucks down the Hall Road to 117.
Hall Road being now known as Chemo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter, do you have any questions about the overview, or should we go to number 5?
None of the overview. No.
Okay. Let's do that then. Let's start the, what? I'm sorry.
Chairman, excuse me. I was wondering if I could give some brief testimony. It's really an uncontested criterion in 8 for historic sites. So it sort of fits in the overview, and that way I can not stay around for 1 week. If that's okay. I don't need to.
Sure, please stand and introduce yourself and tell us what you want.
Scott Dillon, or I'm Scott Dillon, archaeologist and project review coordinator for the Division for Historic Preservation. And as is noted in the exhibit record, we conducted a site visit to the current development of 5-lot subdivision back in 2024. And didn't identify any cultural resource issues within the proposed development of lots 10 through 13, mostly because of the prior disturbance that's been talked about here with the sand extraction. And also looked at and have reviewed the materials in the application regarding the roadway, stormwater, and utility infrastructure that's proposed under this permit, and don't have any issues with that. There has been considerable archaeological review throughout the overall parcel, and I want to know for the record that the lot 9 remaining lands of parcel B still does have, also has known archaeological sites and would require additional archaeological review for any future development, but that's the only lot of this subdivision that would require future review. And we will be submitting a comment letter to the record as part of this proceeding, in the very near future. This information. That's all I got.
Any questions for Mr. Dillon? You're welcome to stay as long as you wish.
Thank you.
Tom, I did just want to note, we have had, Ken Signorello has joined us online, who is, a party that has been preliminarily granted party status. And also Chris Clow has joined us for the trim as well. Thank you, Scott.
Take care.
The applicant can proceed on number 5.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you, commissioners. My name is Corey Mack. I am a professional engineer, PE, and a professional traffic operations engineer. I've been doing traffic studies and transportation studies for a number of years for similar industrial, commercial, institutional, and residential developments throughout Vermont, New England. So I approach this project like I do most of my other projects in Vermont, where we take a look at the proposed land use, and then estimate the trips that are generated by this type of development. We typically follow the Agency of Transportation's transportation impact study guidelines. And in that situation, we estimate the trips that are generated by the project, and any intersections that receive 75 trips in the peak hour or more are evaluated for capacity and congestion analysis. As we approach this project, we looked at the developable area. There was a number of lots that were considered with an acreage associated with them. We looked at comparable floor area ratios for those lots, and estimated the associated industrial park development that could be presented or developed. And using the ITE trip generation rates, we estimated the number of trips that would be prepared or generated from such a development. Using those numbers, we estimated 180 trips in the AM and the PM peak hour. We distributed those trips based on the existing traffic flow on 117. And we estimated that the intersections that would receive 75 trips would be the Sand Hill Road and 117 intersection, Site Driveway, and North Williston Road. From that point, we did capacity and congestion analyses, and we estimated that the levels of service that would be experienced would be meeting the Agency of Transportation's standards, which is typically level of service D for signalized intersections, or for approaches, stop controlled approaches less than 100 vehicle or more than 100 vehicles per hour level of service during the stop controlled intersection. All of the approaches and intersections met that criteria, except for the notable exception being North Williston Road in the existing condition, which is a stop controlled on the northbound approach. It's currently failing. However, there is a agency project to turn that intersection into a signalized intersection. And once that project moves forward, the intersection is expected to operate acceptably into the future. On top of that, standard transportation impact analysis looks at safety at the intersection and surrounding area. We evaluated high crash locations. There were no designated high crash locations, which are segments or intersections that receive a higher than average crash rate over a specified period, 5 years. So there were no high crash locations and within a mile of the project site. And we evaluated just the reported crash history near the project sites. There were a couple of clustered crashes, at Sand Hill Road and 117, and at North Williston Road. That's to be expected at intersections. You'll expect to see some amount of crashes, but there were no patterns of crashes that we would expect to be higher than normal. And furthermore, the North Williston Road intersection project is expected to change the crash patterns that we would see there. We evaluated site distances from the proposed site driveway that met the site distances by a large margin. So both the stopping site distance on 117 was adequate, more than acceptable for vehicles that are on 117 to see a hazard and stop in time, as well as the intersection site distance from the driveway to 117 for people to exit the driveway, be able to look left or look right and judge the traffic situation and enter the traffic stream safely. We performed left turn lane and right turn lane warrants at the intersection driveway. It's met the left turn lane warrant under the full build scenario. So that's when all of the projects are fully constructed in the AM hour, and that's because that's when people are entering at a higher rate.
Those are left turns off of 117.
Yes, thank you. That would be an eastbound left turn onto Emo Road. That warrant was met by volume at about 44% build out. But that again depends on the individual lots that are being developed. So we estimated a certain amount of percent of square footage being developed, and when that reached a certain threshold, I believe it was 225,000 square feet. That's when we estimated the warrant should do that. We recommended that the turn lane is constructed for a variety of reasons. You don't always want to build a turn lane if it's only warranted by volume, but there's other considerations such as pedestrian volumes or bicycle volumes. Those were not considerations that we thought were relevant in the situation. That's given the traffic volumes and safety consideration to remove the traffic out of the traffic stream, that turn lane was warranted. And we further evaluated the Act 145 transportation impact fee that would be estimated with this project. So beyond the 75 trip intersection threshold, we distributed the traffic volumes to Act 145 impact fee generating projects. So that's any traffic associated with this project that would travel through one of these impact fee generating projects. We estimated that within a 5-mile range. It was a fairly high number. I think it's $166,000 or something. And that is to contribute to the regional capacity improving projects beyond the study, the scope study of our transportation impact study. I believe that's the bulk of the material for the impact study. We did not estimate any capacity or congestion impacts and no safety impacts as a result of this project. I spoke too quickly, or you need me to go back. I like to use a lot of technical terms.
Mr. Rushford, do you have any questions for the witness?
Could you describe at least the traffic generation we're going to see from the 33,000 square foot warehouse just by itself?
It will be a fraction of the overall trip generation that we'd estimate. I didn't break it out in my documents to that, but we estimated a total of 528,000 square feet. So if we're talking about 33,000 square feet, it would be, a proportional, order of magnitude, like, less than 10% of that.
I believe it was 6.
6 trips. Yeah, that sounds about right. Or just the 33,000 in the peak hours.
Okay. Any questions from the witness?
Almost.
Do you have any? Mr. Carter, do you or any of your?
Could I just say one thing? Corey is a professional at what he's doing, but he was also, he had several conversations with Ryan to discuss this, as well as V-Trans and the town engineer. So the town has 3 engineers. There was, and I say this because I paid the bills, and there was a lot of conversations between these groups to get this study right. So I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of those conversations between other engineers involved.
I think we might hear from another engineer a little later on this morning. Mr. Carter, do you have any questions for the witness?
I do, and I just preliminarily, I know we're talking about criteria 5, but I do want to make clear that, and we did in our memo obviously say this, that our position is that the segmented review here is not the proper approach for this. And so while their generic traffic studies cover perhaps pieces of the smaller warehouse, we think that the broader considerations around the Amazon project, which is not speculatory, should be considered. And I won't belabor the point, but I did just want to make sure I made that statement. We're happy to discuss that further, provide additional briefing to the commission if it would like. I think that's an important point. On criterion 5, I do have a few questions, and I'm not sure if Mr. Mack's the person to respond to them. But they focus on the what I understand to be a lack of a secondary access point on the proposed road. So my first question is, in this application, have you requested the ability, or do you plan to build a second access that will be maintained and open at the time that Chemo Drive becomes open and operational?
So at the local process, we agreed to keep the existing haul roads cleared, gated. But at this time, there's no plan to build what we call phase 3 of the industrial park, which is connecting the terminus of Chemo Drive with the end of Thompson Drive. It's roughly 3,000 linear feet. At the local level, we submitted a master plan that basically shows that this portion of parcel B here will not be constructed until that phase 3 connector is complete. So there is a secondary access. There's existing haul roads that are utilized frequently by loaded construction vehicles that certainly can support emergency vehicles. We've been asked to keep those areas clear, plowed, and gated, which we certainly will do. But at the current, in the current version of the plan, there is no public roadway connection.
And why not?
Primarily economics. We're building 4,000 linear feet of public road, 2,000 feet of it with no commercial frontage to speak of. By the time we get to the plateau and there's the 5-lot subdivision, 4,000 linear feet of road is a substantial investment to be made. An additional 3,000 linear feet of road, close to doubling the amount of road. Still, for 5 commercial lots, we viewed early on in the local process as a something that we would not consider moving forward with, which is why we worked with the town to develop this master plan that explicitly shows phase 3 includes that connector roadway when the remaining lands of parcel B are constructed.
I appreciate the economic concerns. My follow-up question would be whether you see any safety risks posed by the lack of a secondary access in your expertise, your professional.
Well, from a traffic or transportation capacity.
Traffic, transportation, safety. I mean, specifically with respect to first responder access, but also congestion and beyond, having no lack of access. Do you see, are there any safety concerns? I appreciate there's economic concern, but are there any safety issues that you see with this design and its lack of a secondary access?
Our analysis of the site as proposed did not indicate any capacity or safety issues with the current access from an operational
Okay. Are you aware that the Essex Fire Department, when it looked at this, objected to a lack of secondary access, and in fact, stated on March 7th, 2025, this project should be required to complete the road, no exceptions and no delays. This will generate substantial traffic all at once. As a choke point, will create substantial risk for crashes in the winter topography, and essentially objected to the lack of the secondary access. Are you aware of that position by the Essex Fire Department?
I've heard of that position, but I understand their response as a, a first responder, perspective, not the.
Would you view that as a safety concern?
Not a crash. I did not understand it. I did not see any crash risks associated with that. If it's like routing of emergency vehicles, that's somebody else's perspective.
And I would say that what you're quoting is the staff report for the final subdivision review. At the preliminary subdivision review, which is the same layout, same 4,000 linear feet of road. The fire department stated, the fire department would recommend making the utilities pathway from Thompson Drive to proposed development be maintained as a drivable roadway with access gates on each end. This pathway would be available for a 4-wheel drive pickup or utility vehicle in emergencies to access patients and for wildland firefighting activities. It would not need to be plowed in the winter. However, brush and any felled trees would need to be kept clear. So that's the same single access 4,000 linear foot of road scenario. So we have two flip-flopping of opinions. The Development Review Board chose to uphold, after we received our preliminary approval, chose to uphold the single access and accepted that the master plan showing phase 3 being constructed before any additional lots were put on Chemo Drive was adequate. There's no cul-de-sac. The termination of Chemo Drive is simply temporary. There is a clear intent to finish that roadway in the future.
Thank you.
Can I just?
No, not yet. He has the floor now. Okay.
Excellent. So you would acknowledge, and you call it flip-flopping, that the fire department at the very least had differing views apparently on the safety issues relative to the lack of secondary access.
Within a few months, I would say so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Last question. What are the purpose of the curb cuts on lot 13?
So we're showing curb cuts essentially wherever there's a roadside swale. We want to make sure that any planned curb cuts have proper drainage, whether that's culverts, whether it's catch basins. It is an open, uncurbed road, so there are no essentially curb cuts. But we are planning for drainage circumstances.
The fact that there's the curb cuts there, is there a planned development for that will utilize those curb cuts?
My understanding is that plan was denied by the town of Essex last week.
What plan was that?
Scanell Properties
Okay.
is proposing a 107,000 square foot distribution facility.
Okay. Thank you. And is that, no further questions.
We do have, Susanna online has her hand up as well.
Okay. Ms. Polvo, do you have any questions for Mr. Mack or Mr. Courier about traffic safety under criterion 5?
Bring the screen also.
So you can unmute and
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I did have a couple of questions. So I'm Susanna Polvo. I live at 9 Sand Hill Road. And so my property is surrounded by Chemo, River Road, and Sand Hill. And I have party status. So the first question I had, if I understood correctly, the estimate is that there will be 180 morning trips and 180 evening trips generated by this development?
Yes, that was our estimate in the full build scenario.
So is that in the full, okay, and is that, so that's a total of 360 trips, but does that account for all trips, including outside of peak hours?
No, there is an estimate for the whole day trips, which was 2,231 trips per day.
Okay,
And that's a 24-hour average weekday estimate.
and what type of vehicles will those be?
Primarily passenger vehicles from employees. We did a heavy vehicle estimate based on observations, Allen Martin Road and Thompson Drive, Allen Martin Drive and Thompson Drive. And that was about 6% would be heavy vehicles in the peak hours.
All right, and then if you look at that larger number, I think you said about 2,200. What percentage of increase is that in terms of compared to current traffic levels?
On 117, I don't understand the question.
Well, where are the 2,200 additional trips taking place?
So they would distribute through the existing transportation network.
So what is the
We-
percentage? I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just gonna say that, we don't really distribute on whole day volumes. So I don't have an estimate of where traffic goes, throughout the course of the day. However, in peak hours, we distribute traffic volumes and we usually follow existing traffic patterns. Sometimes we also consider, general development patterns in the region. So, we foresaw most of the traffic heading either west or on 117 or northwest on the Cirque or east on 117 towards I-89. Relative to the existing traffic flows, I could figure that out from the information in the traffic impact study. I don't have that number on me right in front of me.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely appreciate that number. And so your position is that the 2,200 additional trips in that traffic pattern are going to result in no congestion impacts and no safety impacts?
No change to the existing congestion that is currently being experienced. We evaluated the average control delay at all the intersections. And that's all documented. I can get to the table where we talk about, the level of service overall at 117 and Sand Hill Road is on average will increase by one second. That's average for all the vehicles that are traveling through there. So that would be considered a pretty minor increase in delay.
Okay. And then you said there are no concerns about high crash locations within a mile of the project site, but obviously Sand Hill Road, River Road intersection and River Road North Williston intersection are beyond a mile. And you mentioned that having crashes there is normal, but did you find that there would be increased crash risk at those intersections that are further away than a mile from the site?
No, we didn't evaluate, a wider range beyond, what would be considered a typical evaluation area.
Okay, and I have one more question. When you came up with this 2,200 vehicles or trips per day increase, did you look at high and low scenarios? Did you look at like the scenario if all the stages of the plan development come to fruition?
No, so the 2,200, that uses average trip generation rates based on the ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers, land use codes, which that is a data repository with hundreds of data points for lots of different land uses. In this situation, they have surveyed other sites of similar land uses. And, it all kind of averages into, the trip generation per 1,000 square feet of a industrial park. And that also includes the entering and exiting proportion of that traffic. So, it kind of is the average trip generation rate of all the sites that were surveyed.
Would you expect that number though to vary based on the nature of the occupant of the site?
Certainly there would be variability based on the occupant and the day-to-day operations. But, I've found in my experience that the ITE rates are actually pretty spot on when it comes to a lot of types of development.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll just compare it to the Allen Martin Drive and Thompson Drive intersection. We use the Allen Martin Drive and Thompson Drive intersection as like a check. And we found that the existing trip generation rate observed at Thompson Drive was 20% less than the ITE rates. So if we were to use the adjacent land uses as a go-by, I would expect it to be lower than what we're estimating.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We do have a hand raised by a party that is being represented by Attorney Carter.
Well, who is that?
Yeah, I do represent.
Lorraine Zaloom, yeah.
Who?
Lorraine Zaloom.
Lorraine Zulum, do you have you're represented by Attorney Carter, who is doing the cross-examination questions for his clients. Do you have something to say about that?
I don't know how this works. I'm kind of new to this, so I wasn't sure as a represented party if we could also supply or ask an additional question.
There will be a chance for you to speak on your own, and maybe would it be possible to cover that concern when you do your own direct testimony?
I'm not sure because it's related to the information the V-Trans gentleman just gave, and I'm not sure it would end up being covered because of my criteria. I know that that is part of, I fell under that criteria. I just want to make sure that that isn't missed. I did just send the information as well to the lawyer, so hopefully via email, so hopefully he'll take a look at it as well. Thanks.
Certainly call her if that would be helpful. Share a little when the time comes.
Yeah, that's what we're contemplating. So I think we're at the point now of, Mr. Carter, if you have direct testimony you wish to offer on criterion 5, now would be the time for that.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to ask Anthony Stout to testify on that particular criteria.
Mr. Stout, good morning.
Good morning.
Before you proceed, I'd like to note for the record that we do have a July 18 submittal from you, 12 pages on a number of the criteria under review today. And it would be helpful, or might be efficient if you could start out by sort of telling us with respect to criterion 5, if you, in a sense, adopt that as part of your testimony today, so that's maybe a little bit foreshortened some of it. We're not expecting you to read through all of that. So, but can you say is that part of your testimony today?
It is, and I was not planning to read it into the record. I have 1.5 page bulleted summary.
Okay,
I was just gonna touch on some high points. for
okay,
you.
please proceed. Thank you.
My name's Anthony Stout, Senior Planner of Lakeside Environmental Group in Burlington. I've been doing Act 250 work for 40, well, I shouldn't say work. I've been studying or working with Act 250 for 42 years in Vermont, both from, at school, as a regulator and as a consultant to developers as well as neighbors and various governments. I'm going to start, and this is not in the report, but I want to make it clear that the basic traffic study they have presented, I don't have any major problems with. It's a perfectly competent, standard, generic traffic study. They've given you lots of numbers. They've done exactly what the V-Trans asked them to do. It's the normal thing. It's what I would get if I was doing a project and asked a consultant for a traffic study. That's exactly what they would give me. I don't have any problem with that. It's what's not talked about in that traffic study that is the focus of my testimony. It's what the standard generic traffic study didn't address, which I think would be appropriate if you are trying to fully understand the potential impacts from a range, and potentially a wide range of land uses which might occupy this commercial park. So, I'm not, and I mean this very sincerely, that I'm not trying to trash what they've done. It's just what they haven't done, which is what I think needs to be focused on. In terms of the access road, you've heard it's got just over 2,000 feet of 8% grade. As an example, the foot of Sand Hill Road is 10 to 11% grade. The big hill on I-89 west of Richmond averages 6% grade. I'm sure you've seen subdivisions in the past where they beg you to allow them to have an access over 10% grade. There's a range of different things that we often see. When you get into that 8% grade on a paved road with curbs on both sides, you have a significant potential for icing during the winter. They're going to be, I'm assuming that some of their tenants may be using this road at night for nighttime deliveries. There's certainly a possibility that it could happen. A lot of times roads are maintained de-iced during the day, but then they don't get de-iced during the night. A lot of that snow melt can run back when snow that's been plowed off the road can run back onto the road. You can get icing. When a heavy truck starts to slide, it's very difficult to get them back from sliding until they basically go off the road or get into a flat area. So you have the potential, if a vehicle starts sliding going down or slipping coming up, that they'll have to basically get to a stopping point until it's safe. With curbing, they could go quite far down that road trying to stop. And if it continues to be icy, they, in theory, could go all the way down. If they hit an icy spot near the toe of the road and they've been descending the hill at 35 miles an hour and they hit an icing spot, same scenario, they could potentially slide out into 117. At night, you'd hope there wouldn't be a lot of background traffic. But it is a concern that I have about having this type of grade that's continuous with the curbing. It's not ideal for trucks in the winter in Vermont. You potentially have, I think they were estimating over 500,000 square feet of building. I can certainly come up with 143,000 square feet of building that are currently proposed for this park. I've seen applications that we're talking a total of parking for 253 cars, 276 box trucks or vans, 24 freight trucks. This is just in terms of parking. within this park. And that's only on 2 of the 4 lots that they're actively trying to get approved. The 5th lot being the lot 9, which is for phase 3. The question then comes up to what is reliable fire access for that volume of parking vehicles, square footage of buildings. And I've given you a map. The fire station in Essex is up at the upper end of Sand Hill Road. So fire trucks, if they were called, would be coming down Sand Hill, including the 10% grade to 117, over 500 feet on 117, and then back up the 8% grade into the park. Find the right hydrants to attach to, try to keep their hoses from crossing over the road, and fight the fire as they always would try to do. And it's a great thing they do. If you had flat access from Thompson Drive, you wouldn't have the grades to deal with, and the fire department would have multiple choices on how to get into the site for fighting fires. And I gave you a document from the city of Los Angeles, which just gives you a generalized discussion of the benefits of having multiple access roads that you'd often find in an urban or semi-urban area, and the benefit that that provides for firefighting. Lots of different hydrants to hook onto, lots of ways to get around traffic, people parked in the streets, or unanticipated issues you might have. So that would summarize my position on access. There really should be a through road now, not into the future. The next piece I had, and this one is I'm very concerned about, is the left exits from the driveway or access road. It will be a town road at Vermont 117. It is a single approach to exit onto 117. It has a shoulder that is also included, and physically you could squeeze 2 vehicles past each other at the stop line, and that may well happen, as I discussed in my material. But that left turn out heading east on 117 is going to experience potentially significant delays depending upon what the actual trip rates end up being in this park. And this may or may not happen during their AM and PM peak hours that they have currently been examining using average trip generation. For just that average, they were coming up with level of service D with a 31-second delay for those left turns. What they didn't factor into that is some of the geometrics that could potentially occur here, particularly if they build the left turn lane, which I think does make sense, the left turn lane heading into the park. Depending on what tenants are in the park, if it is a tenant which has high delivery rates as opposed to an industrial use, but a commercial use that has a fleet of trucks, and that would be that fleet of trucks that are parked in the 200 and some odd parking spaces just for trucks and vans. If those trucks and vans are returning during shift change during the mid to late afternoon, they're going to be stacking up in that left turn lane coming in. And you've probably all experienced this trying to see past a truck or a van. They don't have windows. They effectively block your view of the vehicles that are passing in the through lane on the back side of the van. And I gave you a bunch of calculations of how much time that would allow, basically 2 seconds for a vehicle passing 3 vans over 115 feet. To give you a sense of what I'm concerned about, predicting what will actually happen there in terms of how many vans, they might back up all the way down to Sand Hill Road. There may be other times when it's just one van or just a car. That's what's going to be difficult to predict here at various times of the day. But I think it's a very serious concern. If the trip rates are higher than what they're predicting for the average, if we've got, a shift change in the middle of the afternoon for a large distribution warehouse in this park, as an example of what potentially could go in here, you could have up to quadruple the number of trip rates. The level of service with quadruple or even double the trip rates is not going to be D at 31 seconds. It's going to degrade rapidly. And because that intersection is only 500 feet from Sandhill and the signal that's at Sandhill, there's a serious question in my mind whether VTrans would ever allow a future signal at that location. They might. It would have to be coordinated with the signal at Sandhill. They might at that point want to go to a double traffic circle system. You may have experienced some of these along Interstate 87 on the Northway when you get down towards Saratoga and stuff. There are a number of different ways you can deal with it, but that's a lot of additional infrastructure that would be required to be built. And the question is, would VTrans be even willing to consider that? And who's going to pay for it? Is it part of the Act 145 impact fees that are currently proposed? Or is some future group of developers around the county within 5 miles going to be on the hook to pay for that in order to serve projects that are in this park? Or should that be addressed right now? With regard to chip generation, I've already touched on the fact that I have reason to believe that if you've got parking for over 200 delivery vans and parking for over 200 employees on one of these lots, as an example of what could happen here, and you've got 2 shifts for that same business, you're going to have a mid-afternoon shift change. Anybody who's lived in the Essex area back into the 70s will remember what it was like on Route 2A when IBM did its shift change. It was a disaster. Everybody avoided Route 2A for that hour or two in the mid-afternoon because it was so congested. For this project, that shift change may well happen in the 2-3 o'clock hour, somewhere in that vicinity. We don't know for sure what might be proposed, but that would calculate if you had a pre-AM peak and a evening return, and you divide that by 16 hours, the midpoint of that is right about the 3 o'clock hour. And I gave you information about that. During that 3 o'clock hour, based on the counts they provided, and I think there were VTrans counts originally for the 117 Sandhill intersection, the peaking in the afternoon, as typically happens, is not just 1 hour. It happens, it's stretched over several hours, and that's very, very common. In more urban areas, it often stretches all the way from the noon hour throughout the afternoon. This is a little more rural out here, so it doesn't surprise me that it's only 3 hours. But you can see that the peak, the 5 o'clock hour is the peak. The 4 o'clock hour is virtually the same, and the 3 o'clock hour is 92% of that volume. This is the background volume at 117 and Sandhill Road. So if you have a tenant in this park who's got a shift change in the 3 o'clock hour, and they've got 200 vans coming in or out and 200 employees coming in or out, and it all happens in that 1 hour, that's quadruple, more than quadruple their 180 vehicles per hour that they used for their average, for their generic park. That's my big concern on the trip rates, is that it simply hasn't been addressed, that trip distribution. And that any permit you issue should address this with some sort of contingency that makes it clear future tenants need to stay within a certain number, because that's what you relied upon when you issued the permit. And if they want a bigger number, they need to talk about it. They need to address it right now. And that their average just doesn't cover that. And then finally, they indicated that they don't normally do review trip distribution for the overall daily flow. And I did that for you. I basically gave you a chart using VTrans numbers from 2023, grew them by 4% a year to 2026, and plotted those out on various road segments in the area. So you can get a sense of how much traffic is already out there. And my concern on this is, without the Cirque Highway connecting to I-89, and we all know the history of that, and I won't go into it. Without that, the vehicles trying to get toward Greater Burlington and points to the southwest, which could be about 33% of their park business based on population distribution. You have a lot of vehicles which are going to head, the only way they can go is to head towards Essex Village. And they'll either go up to 89 and take Vermont 15 in towards Burlington, getting on the Winooski exit, or they'll go into the village, take the little cutoff that they're just finishing, and head south on Route 2A. We all know what that section of Route 2A is like from Essex to Industrial Avenue. I certainly do, because my mother-in-law used to live right at the head of Mountain View Road, so I've experienced that for many, many years. When motorists, employees, possibly delivery van drivers, if they end up being in this park, experience those delays, they're likely to seek alternate routes. Yes, they could go east on 117 all the way to exit 11 in Richmond, and then drive all the way back to Burlington. They could. They could be required to do that. What's more likely is they're going to do what traffic is doing now, and they're using 117 between Sand Hill and North Williston Road as a cutoff. And you can see it in the volume numbers. There's 10,000 some odd vehicles on that segment of 117, less toward Essex Village, less toward Richmond. And you can see that volume jumping up. And they're going up North Williston Road, and then they're cutting up Mountain View back to Industrial Ave, or they're going over through Williston Village and up Route 2 toward Taft Corners. Those are not arterial roads. And yet a big tenant in this park with a big distribution of trucks and vans, if that were to happen here, could potentially be putting a lot of those vehicles onto those non-arterial roads. And to me, that's a serious concern in terms of pedestrian issues, residential issues, and just quality of life. Do you really want all of this commercial industrial traffic driving through Williston Village, where currently it does not happen? That is it in terms of traffic.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any questions for this witness?
I think I want to ask a question is whether we can have Cory provide a rebuttal testimony
Yes.
to that. Could be more efficient. Use of time,
So you're saying you don't have any questions for the witness?
as long as we can have Cory provide direct rebuttal.
Okay, what I'm gonna, yes, but what we're gonna do is see if there are any other parties that, given party status on 5
Susie knows.
who have not had a chance to speak their direct testimony on it. I'll start with Rachel Lazat. Rachel, are you have anything you'd like to say? She's not present. Okay. Well, no. And Susanna Polvo, do you wish to speak your own testimony on 5?
I do.
You have the floor.
Okay, thanks. So first of all, a general comment that I agree that the piecemeal approach to evaluating the impact of this development is problematic. It makes it really hard to understand the cumulative impact. And I think we need accurate information. And in particular, as I alluded to in my cross-examination of the traffic engineer for the applicant, I think we need a best case scenario, and I think we need a worst case scenario in terms of what could happen with the traffic impacts. And another sort of preliminary comment is just that I think development is okay. Development is great. Development is needed for our communities, but it has to be appropriate to the environment that it's happening in, and in terms of size and nature. And if it has this massively disproportionate impact, I think that's problematic. So to get to my observations about my lay person observations about traffic in this area, as I mentioned, I'm surrounded on 3 sides: Chemo Drive, River Road, and Sand Hill Road. And I very often, my sister lives in Richmond, and I very often travel back and forth from Sand Hill along Route 117 to Richmond and back. And as you are approaching Sand Hill Road, coming from the Richmond direction, you have North Williston Road, and then immediately after that, you have the Chemo Drive, and then immediately after that, you have Sand Hill. They're very, very close together. Thinking about Chemo and Sand Hill, or Chemo and River Road being a major intersection is kind of like unfathomable to me how that's going to actually work. In particular, I drive on and past North Williston Road quite a bit, and you very often see 10, 15, 20 cars backed up there trying to make a left-hand turn from North Williston onto River Road. So that I understand there might be some modifications to that intersection, but that really concerns me. And I will say, as a property owner here, there's traffic here. It's not, as the applicant mentioned, it's not a pristine environmental area or natural area. There's traffic, but it's a reasonable amount of traffic. And it's quiet on Saturdays and Sundays. And I'm very concerned about especially at the high end of the scale, the increased amount of traffic is really going to fundamentally change the nature of this area. The last thing I'll say, because I do have to leave early because of a work obligation, is just that the traffic issue overlaps in my mind with the wildlife issue. We have a lot of wildlife here that traverse over Sand Hill Road and through our yard and over towards the direction of Chemo Drive. Right now I don't see a lot of dead animals on the road. I think that animals have figured out how to navigate this. But if there's, a really significant percentage increase in the amount of traffic, I'm concerned that more animals will be struck on the roads. And I apologize, I lied. I have one more comment. The other comment is one of our favorite activities in the winter. It's a little bit, morbid, but we like to sit and watch the traffic coming down Sand Hill Road and sort of judge traffic or the road conditions based on how much people are slipping and sliding. And it happens a lot in the winter that people coming down Sand Hill Road to the intersection with River Road are having difficulties stopping their vehicles. And of course, it's more significant if it's a larger truck or what have you. So I would just reiterate from my personal experience that I think concerns about large vehicles being able to stop at the end of Chemo Drive before they reach River Road is a true concern. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Carter, I know that there may be one or more of your clients who may wish to give direct testimony on this, in addition to what what Mr. Stack has already done. Can you want to try to slide some of that in at this point?
That would be great if we could briefly hear from client Patty Davis.
Yeah, hi. My name is Patty Davis. I live on Hillside Circle, abutting Sand Hill Road. And she's right at the bottom of the hill, so she gets to see the actual sliding. My husband experiences on a bicycle what it's like to almost get hit. And I won't go over it again. I already spoke about the accident at the pre-hearing, so I'm just gonna read this quickly. It's an outline of what I've given you to supplement everything he said, because I've been studying this for 2.5 years. So my outline for the traffic argument is this project site has been, this is all in my words, this project site has been a piecemeal design occurring over multiple decades and 30 different Act 250 reviews. As such, impacts such as traffic have not been holistically reviewed. That means pedestrians, bikers, walkers, people with strollers, pedestrians, dogs. It's a residential zone along Sand Hill. This is contradictory to Vermont planning principles, especially for a resident R2 area. A master plan should be required for the development, or at least a master plan for traffic and traffic solutions, including impacts, should be required before additional build out of any kind. The current application 4C0329-24/4C0347-6 is proposing another 5-lot subdivision that coincides with the existing gravel extraction site. The focus of the application, this application, though, is just large warehouse use and distribution. Again, multiple heavy uses, phases, and plans without future planning, meaning access to the site. It's not the site itself that I have an issue with. It's the access to it and the review of long-term impacts from that build out on our town roads where we live. The instant application proposes to upgrade the existing Hall Road to use as a new public road to proposed warehouse. Applicant's traffic studies state future phases of development in the park may include extension of the proposed new public road to the current terminus at Thompson Drive, maybe 10 years from now. I don't want may, I want it to say shall. This should be a required condition of the current application and any applications that come before you having to do with this entire site. The developer needs to be held accountable for addressing traffic concerns now. It's affecting us now. The heavy truck traffic associated with Saxon Hill development is negatively and dangerously impacting the large residential neighborhood on Sand Hill Road. We're adjacent to it. Again, my husband almost got killed Memorial Weekend riding his bike because the cars coming off of North Williston Road, he almost fell into a flatbed, but I won't get into it. Let's see, it should meet traffic criteria under Act 250. Such could be addressed by requiring the current Hall Road to be upgraded to serve as the entire Saxon Hill Park. Sand Hill Road has been identified in both past and present Essex town plans as being structurally inadequate for heavy truck traffic. Yet the big, long trucks are still using Sand Hill Road, accessing Thompson Drive to get to the industrial park when they should have been, and they have been coming from Allen Martin direction from Route 15 into Thompson Drive until CCRPC said until the access road is completed. They were supposed to be going that route, and I'd like them to go back to that route, please. Almost done. This type of issue occurs when competing land interests such as medium high density residential uses / growth zones are sited right next to growing industrial parks. The developer is responsible for taking planning measures and developing internal infrastructure, working with the town. The town needs to be on the same page, such as a new bypass road to alleviate these conflicts. Conclusion. With every piecemeal project that comes into the Saxon Hill Industrial Park, Sand Hill Road's residents suffer. We are the largest subdivision of residential uses R2 in the entire town of Essex, and this is how we're getting treated. Some of these homes are paying $10,000 a month in taxes, and we can't even bite out of our neighborhood. The developer has a history of not obliging to permit requirements relating to truck traffic. Long-term traffic concerns need to be addressed before additional development of the industrial park continues. This use does not just stop with this particular proposed warehouse use in this permit application. It is an existing issue that will continue to snowball, in my opinion. Thank you very much.
We have, I don't know, Lorraine or Gina, I'm not sure.
And
Lorraine was preliminarily granted under 5. As was
Right.
Gina.
Lorraine Zaloom, do you have anything you wish to say now on 5?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. One of the, I was just curious in terms of the VTrans information that was provided. It was given for the past 5 years, and unfortunately, that doesn't include 2019. And in Essex, we had a presentation a couple months ago for Sand Hill. As also, I'm disappointed that VTrans only really analyzes, if I'm understanding it right, for a mile out. Because really, a project this size, if we're going to include trucks and what the requested parking area is for, it's going to greatly impact the Williston Essex network transportation area that has been long studied for many, many years. I am right on top of that route. I'm 35 feet away from Route 15. I'm close to the Sand Hill Road Essex intersection, not far from that. So I am greatly impacted every day by the cumulative traffic that we experience. The regular cars are not so bad as the trucks with the Jake brakes and the pollution that we're dealing with in the diesel. We've certainly had to add on and at a lot of extra costs, soundproofing windows and air handlers to clean our air that we discovered during COVID was very dirty inside our house because a lot of the road truck that was coming out of Saxon Hill. We know they're coming out of Saxon Hill because we see the names of the trucks on the side of the road. And so we're greatly serviced by traffic that comes out of Saxon Hill. One of my concerns with the information that was provided today, when I look at our own presentation a couple months back for Essex, there was a Sand Hill traffic study that started in 2019. And you can see a lot of the traffic that's included was impacted by COVID. There was a clear anomaly in the data between a couple of the years. And we can certainly send that along too, if that's helpful. In 2019, at the top of Sand Hill Road, we had a fatality of 5. 5 people died in 2019. So when I hear that about the crash query, and I had gone back in terms of the crash query myself, we can see that COVID certainly depressed a lot of the issues with traffic, and that has been slowly returning. There was also a traffic study provided, well, a traffic memo off a traffic study from 2018 that was provided by O'Leary Burke for a build that's next to me. And in that traffic study in 2018, their traffic count was 17,200, if I recall correctly. And when I look at what's recommended nationally for the type of highway that we're on, which is a major arterial, if I recall correctly, that a 2-lane highway with some left turn lanes should max out at 18,400. So since that was a 2018 study, I'm concerned that we haven't had another true traffic count study. I also travel North Williston Road a lot because of where I work and because of personal relationships. And I am extremely concerned about the North Williston Road corridor, which is part of Wentz as well, the traffic study that we've done. And certainly at Sand Hill Road, that if that doesn't get signalized in tandem with the plans for the signalization of North Williston Road, we're going to be double hammered. And certainly the 2019 5-death count supports that. When I looked at VTrans, their plan is to signalize and fix that culvert, because on 117 along the bottom, that is in a FEMA flood zone right below where they're planning on building. And so one of the reasons, as stated certainly by Brian so eloquently, those trees were planted to control erosion. And we're losing more of those. So in terms of traffic, as we see the flooding increase because intense rains are happening, it's not more rain, it's just that they're happening quicker. I don't know that that road is prepared to handle flooding on top of the added traffic. And I'm not sure that VTrans, given the current administration and the losing of federal funds, that we'll be able to fund that planned signalization at 117 and North Williston Road. So there's just a lot of unknowns that are very concerning to me. And the other big concern I have, because I walk Sand Hill a lot with my sister, who has her hand up as well, is that the times of the schools on those traffics, the reason that there is a truck weight limit on Sand Hill Road is to protect our children. We have 2 schools that let out and go in, and we're concerned that with a shift change, that is also going to greatly impact the safety of our community. Also my own safety, because I walk there frequently. There is a series curve on Sand Hill Road that's very close to where Al Martin Drive intersects with Sand Hill. That is pretty dangerous already. We see people traveling often over 50 miles per hour, and you can't see. And given the proposal, which was recently denied, but they may still appeal, we're concerned that if that's loaded up with more delivery vans and things like that, or cars, that it's going to be even less safe. And I want to bike to my sister's. I have a hard time even just biking my sister's, and she's about a mile from me. And we haven't worked in tandem on the whole area. I am not against development. I like development. There's a lot of good development in there. There's some decent proposed development. I'm against development that is so big that we can't predict what's going to happen, and it's going to make us less safe. And this is one of those. It's a large scale development. We're working on trying to downzone the area to eliminate warehouse, the size of the warehousings that's going in there. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Then do we have anyone?
Gina also has been preliminarily granted under 5.
Gina Barrett, do you have anything to add that maybe not cumulative, but more specific to your situation that you can share with the commission?
Just a couple of points. My sister said almost everything I was going to say, which is great. I live on at 157 Sand Hill Road. My name is Gina Barrett, for those on the phone. The only part missed to me was that North Williston Road closes often due to flooding. So when that happens, the traffic again gets rerouted, and this will add to that. And there are truck weight limits on my end of Sand Hill from Allen Martin up to 15. The town implemented truck weight limits to protect our kids, and the vans, many of the vehicles will be under the weight limit. And the school traffic patterns, I agree with. I see it from my front window. There are kids and families and a lot of people biking and walking in our community. The town park and pool is also at the other end of Sand Hill. So there's a lot of community walking in our neighborhood that this will affect. And my sister said most of it. Thank you.
And Cheryl Van Epps has also been preliminarily granted under 5, and she also has her hand up.
Ms. Van Epps, to you now.
Hello. My name is Cheryl Van Epps. I live at 8 Rustic Drive in Essex Town. Excuse me. My residence is approximately 2 miles away from the site, the development site. And I also live 0.6 miles from Highway 289 and about half a mile from Route 117. My comments are my personal experiences. I'm going to start with the biking. I bike down 117 occasionally, and I also walk that route, especially to JP's Diner, which is very close by my home. I worry about the traffic coming down 117 and the increase with the development of this site. Number one, short term, I'm concerned about the additional, this is a large construction project. So the vehicles required for the construction phase of the project, I'm concerned of that. And secondly, the long term. So once the construction has been completed, the operations that are going to be taking place at the site. So both of those, I want to stress that it's kind of hard to wrap my mind around the complexity and the entirety of this project. So I just wanted to make that clarification. So biking, both my son and I have experienced incidents where a truck was playing chicken with me. I was riding my bike on the in the lane on the shoulder of the road, and I actually had to jump off my bike and pull it into the side. So I'm worried about safety for myself as a bicyclist. My son was dragged into Route 15 when he was riding across the entrance from a parking lot by a distracted driver. And that brings me to what I want to discuss, the quality of driving. So not only I understand your traffic studies are looking at the number of vehicle trips, but I also want to talk about the quality of driving that is going to be occurring after these operations are set in place. Time pressured, speeding, stressful driving is not conducive to our safety as pedestrians or as bicyclists, and also distracted driving from using an app to show you directions of how to perform deliveries and losing your focus of what's happening on the road. These are things that have personal impacts and that I want us to be considering in this process here. Let's see. Mention was made about the wildlife. I live on the other side of 289, so it's opposite of this project. What we see as wildlife on 289 is we've had roadkill, a whole porcupine family. Three porcupines were killed. We recently had a wild turkey brood, and one of them, the chicks were lost on 289 as roadkill. A great horned owl. Constantly deer are killed on the road. We've had sightings of bear, coyote, fish or cats, whatnot. So we have an influx, and I want to say this is coming from the east. This is not coming, these wildlife critters are not coming from the west, because that's where the city is. It's more developed on that side. So what I'm saying is I'm afraid that this development is going to impact the wildlife, the range in which they're looking for food, they're traveling the corridors. This is all going to be affected, and I'm concerned about that. And and with the increase in traffic, we're going to see more roadkill on the roads. Is my position. My neighborhood has 2 exits onto 117, and I want to discuss that. When mention was made about the sliding, one of our entrances onto 117 is extremely steep. I have to slow down before the approach because it's both a curve in the road and it's a steep slope at the base of this entrance. I am afraid of icing, so I go extremely slowly down this, and I can vouch for what may happen at Chemo Drive, the slipping, sliding through that, especially in the wee hours of the morning. Another point I wanted to make on that. Oh, when we're taking a left-hand turn onto 117, there are areas of 117 which take a dip and areas where there are curves. It is difficult to see who is coming on from our left in order to take that left-hand turn. So that is also an issue for us. And I am very much afraid that speeding trucks, we may not estimate their speed and end up in a collision. I just want to add those concerns that I have. I thank you for allowing me my opportunity to speak.
You're welcome. Mr. Clow, would you like to weigh in on criterion 5 for V-Trans?
Sure. I think there's quite a bit to unpack here based on what's said, so I'll try and talk about everything as logically as I can. Yeah, some of the,
First, could you introduce yourself?
Christopher Kyle, Vermont Agency of Transportation.
What is your role at the agency?
I am Act 250 development. I appreciate all that's been said here today, and some of this does rely, as some of the attendees were mentioning, on judgments of the drivers. I think that's an important thing that it has to be done. As was mentioned on the potential safety of left turns coming out of Chemo Drive onto 117, and then you've got vehicles in the left turn wanting to turn in. There's a lot of it relies on good driver judgment. I've got that exact same situation at a Hannaford near where I live, where you're coming out of a grocery store, you want to make a left, which is mainly my turn. There's a left turn lane coming in. You have other drivers. They're trying to be nice. They're saying, come on, the coast looks clear, but here's a car coming right behind it going through. It's just, I feel at times like, please use your judgment. Use the right of way, make the left like you're supposed to. That helps other drivers make their judgment. And that happens. I'll give you another quick example. I tend to review crash history a bit, and I do for this area. I was just looking at 2025 data for where Allen Martin runs into Vermont 15 in the north. Vermont 15 across there has a right turn lane going into Allen Martin, and then of course it's a stop condition with you're able to make a left or right. A recent crash there occurred when a semi was looking to pull out of Allen Martin Drive, and so he was at the stop condition looking to turn left to go westbound on 15. Car is going eastbound on 15. They're taking the right turn lane, and they kind of look at the truck saying, hey, the coast is clear. He was waving the semi on, and the semi said, okay, and went, and then there was another car going eastbound on 15 and it struck the semi. And it's a little bit of a shame on who, shame on the driver for directing a semi while they're making a right turn, and the semi for somewhat believing them. So I do know that these types of accidents are the case, and I just wish at times there was some better judgment exercised, on behalf of the drivers. Okay, let me skip to traffic signals for a second. There's been some discussion on that. We're talking about the intersection of 117 and North Williston Road. I looked not only within the V-Trans database, but I actually spoke with the project manager on this.
This is not an if, this is a when. This is slated to go in, according to the latest plans, around the year 2028, North Williston Road. And that's actually going to be Vermont 15 and Sand Hill Road traffic signal as well, for that matter. Same project manager, both of those are slated to go in the year 2028. Regarding a future traffic signal at, let's say, where Kimmo Drive comes on 117, this is exactly why, in general, we have post-monitoring studies. That was mentioned in our comment letter. That's also going to be mentioned within our section 1111 permit granted for this. We're going to be monitoring these, we're asking developers to monitor these developments with traffic as each subsequent development is built here, and we'll be looking at that. Could a signal go there? It's possible one could in the future. It's about 510 feet from Sand Hill Road. We would not want to go any shorter than that. About 500 feet is the minimum distance you would want to go between traffic signals. But at the same time, we're not going to do one that's not warranted. They do need to meet certain sets of warrants. One's just not placed in subjectively. It does need to meet that, and we would look at that. Yes, the developer would be responsible for that if that does happen. That would be within our 1111 permit. We call our highway access and drive permit. There's I call it kind of a boilerplate, but there's always a statement within that permit that says if an intersection that a developer has come into or developers built experiences safety or congestion concerns, it will be up to the developer to work with V-Trans to provide that proper mitigation solution. That could include a traffic signal. That's standard that comes within our permits on this. So that will be looked at as it's developed. As far as the piecemeal in general for developments, and say meeting the cars there, meeting the trips that have been talked about on that. I know this is at the commission's pleasure, but I know that's something the commission has done in the past where if a judgment is rendered on this with conditions, there are the trips set. Such a master development for this is set at 2,000 daily trips with 180 AM and 180 PM, and those parcels come and would state the amount of trips that are for that. And certainly if that goes over, that would obviously have to be looked at again. And that's something that I did mention in our comment letter as well. Maybe one last thing I will mention regarding the extension of Kimmo Drive up onto Thompson Road, regarded as phase 3. It's not something I've said. I don't think there's this Chittenden County Regional Planning Commissioners here, are they? Okay. If not, this isn't hearsay. This is actually an exhibit within Act 250. It's exhibit number 119. It was a letter the CCRPC submitted. I've encouraged anybody to go to the second page of that exhibit and read the first 2 paragraphs there, because regarding traffic circulation around Saxon Hill, Sand Hill Road and so forth, the CCRPC in conjunction with Essex is doing a study on that that's going to yield some results and recommendations in general. Second page, first those 2 paragraphs right there at the top of the page. So that's there as an exhibit. And that may, as they mentioned on the second paragraph, this is something the District Commission may want to consider. And that study is not something that's years out. They say at the end of that, that's proposed to be done by September of this year, if not a bit earlier. So that is something to bear in mind the Commission may want to look at.
Mr. Cloud, could you give me one more time through your comment on what's stated as earlier on as segmented review or piecemeal review? Could you go through that one more time? I didn't catch all of it.
From what I've seen from industrial developments or developments where you have subsequent parcels being developed, they go through Act 250 and they're looked at. But more than that, I've seen commissions in the past put on their main permit, and this subdivision is approved for its 2,000 daily trips and 180 AM and 180 PM. And then as each parcel's developed, I've seen this one creates this many trips that fall under the 180. Okay, so far it does. Is there something huge that comes along that just blew it out of the water? Oh, it's not 180 more. We just went past. We're at 200 plus. Needs to be looked at again through a traffic impact study. Yeah, I mentioned in my comment letter, Brian and I were talking about some the purpose of this is that there wouldn't be a traffic study needed necessarily each time one of these parcels comes in. A post-monitoring study is going to happen each time, which I'm really favorable towards, because then you'll actually know the traffic, the cars that are there versus projections. But we did state if the trips are exceeded beyond what is estimated here, if that segment's built to Thompson Drive, right, that changes the traffic pattern of the road in that area in general. A traffic impact study would need to be redone in those instances. I mean, again, that's mentioned in my letter.
Thank you. Mr. Rushford, does the applicant have any questions for Mr. Clow?
Not this time.
And Mr. Carter, same question to you. No. And I'm going to ask Susanna Polvote, do you have any questions for Mr. Clow?
I do not, thank you.
Okay. I think now it would be an opportunity, Mr. Rushford, for Mr. Mack to give some rebuttal testimony to the testimony from Mr. Stout, if you are ready for that.
Sure. So you heard testimony about the grade of the road and the concern about trucks losing control and weather on the grade of chemo at 8%. Do you have an opinion about that?
Well, typically I have a pretty high respect for truck drivers in particular with their ability to control their vehicles. I've seen them do some pretty amazing things, backing into various, loading docks and everything. The professional drivers, they know the operating characteristics of their rigs pretty well, and are tasked to. Their career depends on them driving safely. So I think that they, in general, they are very good at keeping control of their vehicles. It's my understanding that grade is lower than Sand Hill Road. So I would imagine that it would be an improvement to the condition that's existing on Sand Hill Road.
Can you comment on what I would call the landing pad for Chemo Drive as it comes to the intersection of 117 and compare that to the landing pad at Sand Hill Road?
It's my understanding that there is no landing pad at Sand Hill Road, and that there is a level landing area on the approach to River Road to give vehicles an opportunity to have a level place to come to rest.
Let me interject a question. What's a landing pad?
So at the very end of the hill.
Yeah, so it's like a flatter area. It's got a grade of, typically, Brian would design this, and he can tell you exactly.
Yeah, so typically transition to a larger collector street or even a local street. Typically a maximum transition of 3%. V-Trans standards is typically 50 feet. This transition is 100 feet. So it's a 3% transition, 100-foot landing area prior to the intersection that's significantly flatter than the 8% climb that is above it.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
So in your opinion, would the Chemo Drive at 8% with the landing pad be a safer condition than exists at Sand Hill?
It would be an improvement to what exists at Sand Hill, and it exceeds the V-Trans requirement.
Thank you. You heard testimony about the left-hand turn and concern about drivers waving other drivers on.
I did.
Do you have an opinion about that?
Yes, I've looked through our transportation impact study in response to that. Our analysis shows that we would expect a maximum queue in the AM peak hour of less than a vehicle, and that's when there's the peak amount of traffic coming in. So the period in which there would be, I think that the exhibit prepared had 3 vehicles stacked up there. That would be an extremely unlikely circumstance. The 95th percentile queue that we estimated was less than 1 vehicle. The 95th percentile queue is representative of like the peak queue you would expect at one point. So that means that there's not such a large quantity of vehicles turning left that they would stack up, that there's enough gaps that they can process and go through. So, there won't be a 3-vehicle queue expected.
Can I ask a question on that? Is that for a passenger vehicle, or what type of vehicle is that for?
That's for the flow rate of the vehicles that are approaching. So that's any number.
Any vehicle, whether it was a semi or a small?
It's when it says, when it states the number of vehicles in the queue, it's referring to a passenger vehicle.
Okay, so if it was a bigger van or a truck, that might be different.
Well, it reports, the report describes the queue length in numbers of vehicles.
Mhm.
And it would report, and that is the kind of a proxy for length also. So if it was a truck, that'd be like equivalent of like 3 vehicles perhaps.
Okay, so then so if there were multiple trucks, it might extend further than what the 3 vehicles are depicted. I'm just trying to understand, like.
That wouldn't, that's not expected to occur. Yes, if two trucks were to come up like one after another, that's statistically unlikely from the analysis. And they would, be able to have gaps in the oncoming traffic so that that queue would not be there for a significant amount of time. So vehicles that are queued up there, they should not, as Mr. Clow stated, they should not, it would be illegal for them to proceed into the roadway when they don't have the right of way. So they shouldn't do that. And the vehicles oncoming have sufficient gaps to cross the lane to enter. And so the scenario in which somebody's being waved in is unlikely.
So in your opinion, is it safer to have the left-hand turn lane or not?
It is, yes. And that's to remove the slowing and stopped vehicles because they will occur. They will be slowing and stopped vehicles. That's to remove them from the traffic stream, so there's fewer oncoming traffic behind them that what might cause a rear end collision.
And I just want to go back a minute to site distances. So could you, I just want to make sure we cover this. So when you're at the bottom of Chemo Drive and you look to the left, how much of a site distance do you have?
We measured over 500 feet. At some point, we just stopped measuring because it exceeded the minimum requirement. So that's over 500.
And looking to the right, what for Sand Hill, what would?
Again, that'd be over 500 feet. That was through the signalized intersection, and we did not measure beyond that because it exceeded the minimum requirements.
And do you have an opinion about whether vehicles are speeding, how that may relate to site distances?
So the 85th percentile that we measured was higher than the posted speed limit. Posted speed limit, I believe, is 40 miles an hour there. It's transitions to 50 miles an hour just east of here. So I would imagine that you would expect some amount of, speed transition in that period. It exceeded the site distance requirement though for that speed limit.
So just to clarify, so when we say exceeded, it means it's.
Yeah, the available site distance was greater than the required speed.
And so in your opinion, is it safe?
Yes, there was the amount of site distances that is provided at Chemo Drive allowed for vehicles to process, see oncoming traffic and make a judgment as to gaps in traffic to safely proceed.
And based on what you're, do you have any other items you want to comment on?
I was making some notes. Some of the comments were made about the regional impacts to traffic from, as this distributes. But that's precisely what this Act 145B is for. It is the project is contributing to the fee and for the signal at North Williston Road, at Sand Hill Road. It's contributing to the current construction on 2A right now. It's contributing to the Crescent Connector in Essex, so a variety of capacity improvement projects. That's precisely what this is for. because it would be unreasonable, for a project to study that many intersections, a scale of that, a study to be that great. The Act 145B is set up specifically to capture these smaller amounts of trips that we're sending through there. So, we estimated some, 10 trips through that, or 15 trips through there. And so it contributes to those projects.
Questions? Carter, do you have any follow-up cross for Mr. Mack's rebuttal testimony?
Well, yeah, I would like the request of time for Mr. Stout to rebut the things that were called into question with respect to his opening testimony.
Can you do that by asking Mr. Stout some questions?
Certainly. Mr. Stout, you heard the testimony that was just provided relative to the testimony that you gave. Are there particular points that you would highlight in rebutting that?
Two basic points, one with regard to Mr. Clough's testimony and one with regard to Mr. Mack. Mr. Mack's first, since it was just happened. He basically told you that he wasn't concerned about left-hand turns because he analyzed the left turn into the project road during the AM peak hour. And it wasn't a concern. Therefore, it was statistically unlikely for there to be any unsafe conditions. In essence, I believe that's what he said. And what I have been addressing is not the AM or PM peaks as were in his traffic study, but what the peaks that were not analyzed for a particular type of project that could go into this park that may have two shifts with an overlapping shift change in the mid-afternoon with hundreds of vehicles using that driveway all at the same time. Did he analyze the left turn in and out at that time? That's what my testimony about the left turn lanes, the stacking vans, everything else was about. It was not about the AM peak hour when employees are coming into work for your typical industrial park.
We'll note that. Anything else?
With regard to Mr. Clough, basically the similar point, which is he said, why doesn't the commission just put a limit on AM and PM trip rates? And if they go over it, they'll have to come back and redo it. And V-Trans can do that through the 111 permit process too, although I've rarely seen them do that. Again, that misses the mid-afternoon two-shift type business that you get with an IBM, with a GE aircraft down in Rutland. There are a lot of examples around the state where you have a totally different traffic pattern with local peaking different than the peaking on the state highway system. And there's nothing in criterion 5 that says you are limited to the AM and PM peak hours on the neighboring highway. You've got to use your judgment as to, have you covered all the different scenarios that could occur? That is it.
Thank you all for that, which would see how much we can get done in the next 15 minutes on criterion 1, starting with the applicant. Thank you, Mr. Mack. Appreciate it.
So criterion 1, air pollution. Project proposes 33,600 square feet of a warehouse facility. It's proposed to be heated with Vermont gas. No wood burning heat sources are proposed as part of the project. No manufacturing or industrial process that produce dust, smoke, odors, or noise are being proposed at this time. During the construction, dust will be controlled through diligent street sweeping, water and calcium chloride application. We have already received our construction rental permit from the state of Vermont. The permanent stabilization measures for the project are
topsoil seeded mulch, erosion control matting, straw wattles. And then we're proposing just under 2 acres of hydro seeding up along the corridor of the steeper section of road in order to have that road constructed in phases. All with the idea of reducing erosion control potential.
The site plans. Okay. Keep going. Go ahead. I just want to get the site plan.
Construction hours have been proposed at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. We don't anticipate blasting as part of this project. The surroundings of the project from the proposed warehouse on lot 11 in regard to air pollution were greater than 2,000 feet from the residential properties to the west, with parcel D being the town-owned land in between lot 11 and the homes on Sand Hill Road. The finished floor elevation of the warehouse is 88 feet above the neighboring structures, the closest neighboring structure at 51 Sand Hill Road. The finished floor elevation of the warehouse is also 186 feet above Kimo Drive and the Vermont 117 intersection. So significant elevation change from the occupied uses around us. South of the project, we have the solar field. It's zoned industrial, owned by one of the signed on landowners, SH2. East of us is industrial zone land, owned by Allen Development. And to the north is also parcel D. There's a strip of it, also conserved land and wooded. So we're wooded on the northwest, east sides, and south of us is a solar field. Generally in Vermont, the prevailing winds typically flow in a westerly direction. So all the residential uses here are south and west of us. So generally the prevailing winds will be flowing from west to east towards the industrial zone land owned by the applicant. The project does not trigger the requirements for an air pollution permit. The project will generate vehicle trip ends. However, visual annual emissions checks are required on motor vehicles in Vermont. 2016 and newer models undergo emissions inspections. That's what I had for air pollution. Tom.
Okay.
You want me to stop at air pollution or continue to noise?
Well, if you have anything else under criterion 1, that would be the time to offer it.
So the grading of the access road to a town standard of 8% for sustained grade of more than 300 feet is a requirement of the town. We're meeting all local dimensional standards. The first 100 feet, as mentioned before, creates a 3% transition from 117 to the lower access road. But from station 14 to about station 29, it's about 1,500 linear feet. On the western and eastern side, we're creating a 6 to 20 foot high embankment, 20 feet at the most, 60 at the least within that stretch. And generally that is being done in order to produce that landing area at the bottom. Sand Hill Road, as discussed previously, with no landing area, could generally follow topography. In order to create that landing area, there's a significant cut in the roadway throughout that 8% climb to the top of the hill. So in that area, that 6 to 20 foot high berming area will be a significant sound dampening of any vehicles utilizing the roadway. Sure. Yeah.
You know what I did with that?
It's one of
I
our.
think that was maybe 23.
Yeah, keep
It
it
was 23,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh.
I think we had that.
Yeah, it's one of the original ones. Nope. Can you go back to the database? Go up. Keep going. Keep going.
Plan profile, probably sheet 9 shows most of it. Exhibit 9. So this is, the portion on the west side, or the left side of your screen, where the embankment to the west, climbed to about 20 feet. Lower down, station 13, what I'm saying, starts at 6 feet embankment, grows to 20, and then gets back down to 0. So through that 1,500-foot section of the 2,000 feet of road that's being proposed from 117 up to the Allenbrook property where the subdivision is, a significant portion of it will be lower than the immediate surrounding area. Another piece of that is station 13 is 20 feet lower than the closest residence on Sand Hill, and station 29 is about 70 feet higher than the closest home on Sand Hill Road. So where the more equal elevations occur are within that significant grading and berming effect for the road. So the existing drive on the existing Hall Road that we're upgrading to the public road has a roughly a 50-foot transition to 117, which creates much smaller embankments, though there are some there today. The EPA has established an adverse health impact at a sustained 70 decibel level for 24 hours, 365 days a year. The town noise ordinance is applicable from a private residential properties to private commercial properties, and that's set from 60 to 75 dB. It's various depending on time of day, type of use, and how sustained the noise is. The warehouse use on lot 11 is roughly 2,000 feet from any residential properties, as we've discussed. Basic sound attenuation principles, which is roughly a 6 dB drop for every doubling of the distance, would estimate a noise of 100 dB at 10 feet would be less than 55 dB at 2,000 feet. So significant distance. 100 dB is essentially close proximity to a motorcycle, power tools, lawnmower, and 55 dB is generally the level of bathroom exhaust fan or a quiet conversation. Now, these sorts of principles don't take into account wind currents, elevation change, significant forestation between the development and neighboring properties. It's in a vacuum type sort of situation, flat ground, no obstacles. So the EPA requires trucks built after 1988 to not produce sound emissions greater than 80 dB. We point out that trips generated will primarily not be heavy trucks. For example, the lot 11 parking ratio has only 8 truck docks compared to 58 parking spaces. So we're only allocating 10% of the parking spaces for trucks. I believe Corey mentioned that our expectation is roughly 6% for trucks. So, certainly not the typical occurrence of people using or not the majority of the folks using the new roadway. Truck manufacturers include muffler systems to reduce noise of Jake brakes or engine brakes. And we'd certainly be open to a covenant restriction that will be imposed to each lot, each lease or deed, which would require the tenant or owner to instruct all truck drivers not to use any unmuffled Jake brakes when descending Chemo Drive. The proposed uses, again, are not proposing any sustained noises.
Thank you. Mr. Carter, do you have any questions for the witness?
Yeah, just briefly. Under criterion 1, the applicant bears the burden of production and persuasion. So my first question is, what evidence did you submit to reflect the nature and amount of the pollution generated by the vehicular traffic that will ultimately use Chemo Drive, as you estimated in your traffic study?
So we have daily trips, we have peak trips, and as I mentioned, the state of Vermont has regulatory, visual inspections and emissions testing for vehicles over, 2016.
Okay, so just to be clear, you submitted no evidence as to the impact, undue or otherwise, on the nature or amount of pollution produced by your traffic study estimates to use Chemo Drive.
And as I also mentioned, no air pollution permit was required as part of the.
That was a yes or no question. Yes or no, you submitted evidence or you did not submit evidence as to the nature and amount of pollution?
I believe we, estimated the amount of trips that would utilize the roadway.
Okay. For the record, I'm going to say that's a no evidence as to that. What about evidence with respect to particular pollutions that may be produced, whether by long haul trucking, large trucks, vans, or otherwise, based on the number for this particular warehouse and your trip generation estimates?
Yep.
So what evidence is in the record as to the type of pollutions?
Yep, so this is a warehouse facility. There's 6 truck docks being proposed, 4 overhead doors, and more than 50 parking spaces. The trip generation for this facility is 6 peak AM and PM trips. I know we submitted a daily number, but I don't have it off.
And is there any evidence as to the specific particulate matter emissions that are going to be created by those in the record?
So we estimated the amount of trips that would be.
Okay, I understand that to be no. What about you touched on the directions of the wind, generally east to west. On what basis are you asserting that the winds generally move, I think you said west to east? And is there evidence in the record to support that?
Blowing westerly.
Okay.
Westerly.
On what basis are you making that assertion?
Heard it both ways.
He meant from the west.
From the west.
From to the east.
Yeah, that's the brilliant.
To the east.
Is that just to your knowledge? Is there a document? Is there something in the record that shows that, or is that just your testimony?
So the citation is Climate of Vermont. The author's L. Dupigny Giroux at 2.
The citation for what?
Climate of Vermont is the source for that information.
Okay, is that in the record? Have you submitted that document?
We certainly can. I'd also say I think that's pretty common knowledge as well.
Okay. Well, I would say that the applicant bears the burden of production and persuasion, and for making these sorts of determinations. I'm not sure whether it's common knowledge or not. I think it's going to require more than just common knowledge as a basis for concluding that. What about the impacts of the pollution on neighboring properties, those with impaired health concerns, et cetera? You considered that, or is there any evidence as to that impact?
Again, we provided the amount of truck trips that would be produced at this location, and in our opinion, an average person, and I think it should also be stated that most of the abutting properties are directly on Sand Hill Road, where this roadway is significantly further from Sand Hill Road.
Would you agree, based on your experience and expertise, though, that there is going to be a change in pollutants based on the use of the spec warehouse and Chemo Drive Road?
In my opinion, not to a undue level.
Mm-hmm. And on what basis would you be making that judgment? Is there evidence in the record as to that?
Yep, I think all the testimony that I've given thus far.
Okay. Great, thank you. No further questions.
Okay. Let me. Mr. Carter, do you have any direct testimony that you want to offer from anyone on criterion 1?
Yes, I would offer, Mr. Stout's testimony with respect to, noise under criterion 1.
Do you want to do that, ask him now, or just rely on what he submitted?
I think we can ask him to point out summarize the key points that he made
Okay.
in his summary. So Mr. Stout, would you summarize, based on your experience and expertise, the key points that you'd like to make on noise under criterion 1?
And this could also be applicable under criterion 8 to the extent it's more of an aesthetic issue rather than a health concern. I only did an open field noise assessment. I don't generally get into trying to predict how various mitigation measures will increase or decrease the open field predictions. Generally, for my work as a planner, I'm just trying to identify whether noise should be of concern sufficient to ask an applicant to explore those mitigation options. So I just did a simple open field analysis with the EPA compliant trucks at 80 decibels. I gave you the numbers you can hear at different distances, and I marked on my neighborhood map where those points were, which are along the entrance road here. I'm not concerned about the 4 lots themselves. They are correct that they are proposing side slopes on either side of the road. And if I can just do a visual graphic, they're basically saying you won't hear something in here because it's in here. And what my testimony pointed out for the folks on Sand Hill Road is that the road, the upper portions of the road where the trucks are going up and down, is approximately, and the average between the two of you is like this, and tip down at 8% grade. You now have potential for reflection off that side slope. How much? I can't tell you. But it's not just an easy, there's side slopes that block the noise because the road does angle towards Sand Hill. So you need to factor that into your consideration. With that said, if it's only EPA compliant trucks, 80 decibels, I don't have any big concerns. I'm sure the trucks they're experiencing on Sand Hill Road are much worse because they're much closer to their homes. It's the straight pipe trucks that concern me. Just this morning, coming in to the meeting, coming up Shelburne Road, there was a truck that had prime logistics on the trailer. Looked like, a big national trucking line, typical you see on the interstates, but it had a private tractor on it, RJ Pickens. I didn't catch where they were from. They were bringing that in. All the little lights on the tractor, customized. And the moment he touched the accelerator, you got the straight pipe noise. And then he came up to the intersection, he used his Jake brakes. That's what I'm concerned about for this road. It's going to be a town road. Can you control who's going to use that road? I know the neighbors would rather have the trucks using Jake brakes not be on Sand Hill. I'm sure they would prefer they be over on this road. But even if they're over on this road, is there a way to control not having the straight pipe type trucks, the independent truckers using it? I don't have an easy answer for you. They haul lumber, they haul wood. There's a sawmill up the road here on Route 15. They're probably going to be cutting through. They're trying to just do their job. It's a problem. They should be using Route 15 and 289 and the Cirque Highway down to 89. That's not going to happen. So now you're left with a,
I'm sorry, I just want to ask, what's a straight pipe as opposed to the alternative?
it's a open pipe in the exhaust system, so you don't have the same muffler system that you would have on an EPA compliant truck. And Jake brakes work through compression on the engine. And so the noise you're hearing from a Jake brake is basically exhaust noise coming out through the muffler pipe. Same thing when you accelerate or put a load on a truck. the noise is coming out the exhaust pipe. So a straight pipe has less muffling on it. That's what you're hearing.
Okay. Anything else? No.
That covers it.
Mr. Rusher, do you have any questions for Mr. Stout?
No direct questions, but you may ask from Paul for Bob.
You've got 3 minutes.
And asking.
You go right ahead.
So we heard about the, what I'll call the funnel effect. Have you looked at the plan to see what the distance is from that area, from the Chemo Drive to the nearest residence?
Yeah, so at the end of the funnel, we're looking at roughly station 29 plus 00.
That's your,
Yeah. So at that spot, it's roughly 1,600 feet to the nearest residence to the west on Sand Hill Road.
so assuming no other mitigating factors such as the berm or vegetation, wind, what, under the mathematical chart, what would the decibels be for a EPA compliant system?
50 dBA.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Carter, anything else?
Nothing.
Okay. Is there anybody who participating remotely who's a party who would like to give any brief comments on criterion 1? Okay, thank you. We will take a 30-minute break till 12:40 and start up with criterion number 8. Thank you.
I'm gonna share a screen.